Give me two. Bennett Wakayuta Muya Wal Mukbaja. I'm just going to dive right in. Going downstream together, I think about this area. This whole area has so many different meanings for me. Our Wallapai elders talk about the river as the river could take your life, so they want you to be real careful, or it could give you life. In my personal story, it's done both for me. My little brother drowned in the river. His body was found, Joe Walker, back in 1997, just below Diamond Creek. And, he was a Wallapai river guide. And, it was devastating. And, during that time, both of us were young. He was 19 at the time. I think I was probably about 22, 20, or maybe 25, 20, 24, 25. It was about the same time I met my wife. And, at that time, I let a lot of my emotions take over me. And, I was heavily into drinking, and I got sober. And it happened to be a timely situation. I just barely got out of rehab. I just barely got a year of sobriety. And that was my first real time of sobriety. And, but at the time I wasn't working. And, my wife happened to be like a secretary at the health department. And then, the cultural department here had thrown a shout out to the community and said, we're sending some emergency people down the river. 7 people backed out at the very last minute. Do you know anybody that could be ready in 30 minutes? And at that time, I've done a little bit of river running for the Wallapai tribe, and I was expecting something like that. I had no idea what was up into the canyon, which a lot of Native tribes are, just the majority of Native tribes that are affiliated with the canyon do not really know exactly what's down there. Hardly anybody has gone down, just a few, and it's building slowly. But I didn't expect it to be like that. And before that, I was ethnocentric to my Hopi side. All I knew was the Kiva Kachina way of life, and just that Hopi side of myself. And she says, oh, you just need a couple pairs of shorts, that's about it. So I went down the canyon, and from the very get-go, there was a spirit energy there that just took me over. And it happened to be at that timely area, and it instilled a sense of pride in me that I've never felt before. Sobriety on top of that was, I was beginning to just barely see through the fog. And, the feeling there, and just learning at that time, some of the sites going down. We had a spiritual advisor at that time, and he was a young guy, probably about the same age as I was. And, but some of the things he knew, just made sense, and so that river, it did exactly what the elders had told us. It takes your life, or it could give you life. And since then, my whole life turned around. And that's the connection that I try to portray for anybody going down. And it doesn't matter if you're a tribal person, because we all have our creation stories. I've been involved with Grand Canyon Trust and the Native Voices projects and all this stuff since 2011. And since then, I've gone through so many conversations with elders about, and that's almost like 2 trips a year. One of them was including our cultural monitoring trips. So, going down the river over and over and over and just learning new things constantly has been one of the most eye-opening experiences that I, do to share. And with my story, I try to, push that on to not only people that are new in sobriety, because that could happen, but just anybody that needs something in their life. Last year on the water trip with the GTS, um, you know, that was my first time on the GTS, but we shared an experience of loss. Everybody had a COVID death story. Everybody had some kind of death story. Somebody had lost a friend on the river, or just something, and that's what pulled us all together. And I never would have thought that death would have been, you know, uh, a factor that brings so many people together. But you know, we are able to just converse about what that pain was for us and how to let it go. And that's what going down the river kind of meant for all of us. We were all into that together. We have so many stories about just going down and being able to connect in some way. I remember one of our first Native Voices trips was Recipe for Disaster. The it snowed on us. The days were real windy. We had elders, but a lot of us younger people just stayed up most of the nights, almost every night, to keep those elders warm and everything like that, and just pulled together to keep this disaster trip into something positive. And it was never considered a disaster trip. That trip became one of the most magical trips that's ever happened, because we all pulled together and we all, shared the load in order to just, get through. And the elders were the ones that laughed through it all, and they were just super happy on how, the whole thing just went through. And these are the things that we could share as a people, because everybody is still in our creation stories, both in Hopi and both in Wallapai. Our creation stories talks about the different colors of people, the 7 leaves of bamboo reeds, the 4 ears of corn, the ram stories that are on the rocks, that, where one mother ram has given birth to so many other different baby rams. These are all creation stories that talks about us being together, and that's what this river means for me. On top of that, we also have our own cultural stuff, but that's for our younger people. Um, I also think about just my connection through my family. Wakayuta, Wakayuta is our traditional name. Growing up, my last name used to be Jackson, and that Jackson last name was only given to us for about two or three generations, and that was given to us from the missionaries. That was never our name. And then so I wanted to change my name back to my mother's maiden name, which is Walker. And then before she passed on, she had said, "You're not a Walker, you're a Wakayuta." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Go ask your auntie Sharon." And so I asked her, and she told me all these stories, and told me a story about, and then she told me what it meant. She said it means come in the house. So when people are coming to the canyon, that's what it means to me, is you're coming into my home. And we come from Mohawk Canyon, and it was my mom who had grown up down in the canyon in this little shack of a house where there's just walls of canyon on both sides. She's about 15 miles in the canyon, and then another 17 miles to the river. So she was one of the last generations to actually live our traditional life, which was following the deer. Summertime, they would go down to the mouth of that Mohawk, and at that time, the Glen Canyon Dam wasn't there. So they had that opportunity to go low water, and that was a crossing area for us to trade with the Paiutes. And that she remembers, doing that as a little girl. Then they'd go up to the little house, and they were still in the horse and buggy, and it took them 15 days to get from the little house up to Fraser Wells, and Fraser Wells area where a lot of the Wallapies actually lived. We never lived in Peach Springs until recently. So, Fraser Well area, there was still different bands living traditionally here and there. And Fraser Wells where we're from, but Mohawk Canyon really. So it seems like it was supposed to be such a long time ago, but it wasn't. When the Glen Canyon Dam was put in, it became more of just a big touristy thing. And to us, this is, one of our areas that we collect, where we lived. And we had so many of our backbone stories of a traditional way of life that connected with the river. And just so many of the different aspects that's changed the canyon because of the dam. We've just had to learn and go with it, because there is nothing that we could do. But now we finally have a voice, we finally have a platform, and that's what we're using. We're using everything that we have to kind of share our home, because in all reality, we don't see it ever coming back to us, but we could still remember, be there, and share what it is that is for us. I've got time for questions. It looks like.
Bennett, I want to thank you. You started right out the gate with your story, right? Of how the river affects the lessons from your elders. It can give you life or take it away. And I want to thank you first and foremost for that story sharing with us. I'm also going to encourage folks really to have the dialogue. If you are able to turn on your video and in a space to do so, it just kind of allows it for a little bit more of a conversation. Bennett has shared with us already so much. It would be really wonderful for us to kind of give back our energy even through a virtual means. So,
it's also, something that I kind of joke about, but something that's kind of serious is, the playtime that everybody else utilizes this area for. And especially Wallapai, we're a playful people. We're just loud and boisterous and laughing all the time. We're just never serious, it seems like. And but a lot of that laughter masks just so much stuff that we've had to stuff inside. We go down this river, and even though I've got some time in sobriety under my belt, there's always those little things that I part of that I sometimes, oh man, do I miss that? I wonder if I could get away with something, and I talk about the river corridor, and I always say, oh man, that's just like an alleyway, because look at all the reservations that are surrounding the canyon. We got the Paiute on this side, we got the Navajo, Havasupai, Wallapai, and these areas are dry reservation areas. We are not allowed to have alcohol consumption, because we're it's just been instilled with us that's such an ugly, awful thing, which it is. But we're adults, and we want to, but we've got these rules imposed on us, and then we have this corridor where those rules don't apply. And I always say, oh man, that's like the alley, everybody's just going back there drinking the alley. But it's something that I always kind of thought about, was just the show, or the situation that stuff like that can bring. And we've heard horror stories of things that do happen while under the influence. And this is a sacred place. This is not only as this is the area that we've learned how to, the secrets of fire, where the animals did talk to us, and they still talk to us. We have spirit beings and spirit energies that are duty to stay there forever and ever, since energy never dies. And we've got all these entities around that are still with us. And, we talk about these doorways and these different dimensions. And, we're in that area where those things become real if you open up your heart and your mind to the things that can happen, and they can change a life, it can save a life. And for me, it saved my life. So I give it all my duty to not only share with our young Native people, but to also, give as much respect and try to portray how I feel about the whole place to other people, to the guests that come into my home.
Thank you, Bennett. You gave such strong narrative to the human experience and the experiences that connect us all, and that acknowledgement and recognitions that our stories are a little nuanced and different, and how we, I love even just hearing the analogy of it being kind of an alleyway. Thank you. That perspective has been so helpful. I wonder if there are other questions out there. You might want to come off of mute. We have a few more minutes before we welcome our next speaker.
I have a question. Thank you, Bennett, for sharing your stories with us. I was wondering how you think we can, make the Grand Canyon more accessible and available to more Native peoples to be able to have those experiences and have that connection with the river that, a lot of people don't get to have. And bring more people into the river and let them experience the beauty and the powerful and the spirit of that.
This question came up with the ICCG meeting, and one thing I shared with them was, how is it possible that a Native person could become a river guide? Because I've expressed interest in becoming a guide myself many times, but there's these hoops that are required to become that kind of a guide, which is like, you've got to do the canyon like so many number of times, rowing, and and we don't have the luxury of being able to relocate somewhere to live in order to take advantage of opportunities like that. If I wanted to be one, then I would have to just leave my family. I've got 6 kids. My youngest is 6 and my oldest is 25. So I don't have that luxury of leaving my family to go and become a river guide, but I push my younger kids in the community to do the same and try to get them involved in here. But with the hoops that are hard for us to try to jump through, I don't know how a young Native person is able to come up to Flagstaff, which seems to be close, but where would they stay at? Does their parents have a means of financial support for that to happen, to put them through some kind of training? So, I was saying maybe we just need to kind of lessen the hoops for a Native person to just come and learn and come and share, then come and share about what this area is for tribal people. But, with Grand Canyon youth, there, that's where it's starting at, the interest. I remember the first Wallapai trip, my daughter was part of a Diamond Down trip. And, Wallapai youth are, so enclosed, it's almost scary for them to just be around anybody that's non-Native. And those are the things, because, this is reservation life. They see brown faces daily, but when they go to town, they just become enclosed into a shell of, oh my gosh, and there's no conversation there. So, those are the things that we have to kind of learn how to live with and learn how to deal with before we even could go out to the outside world at a lot of times.
Bennett, thank you so much for your insight. We have some thoughts in the chat around maybe more interpretive trips that hire Indigenous interpreters to be able to really highlight and tell accurate stories. Wondering if there are other ways to create better access to Indigenous peoples to where they once lived. I know that there's work being done by some, and we need to do better to listen more and understand the barriers that you're talking about to make it more accessible. So I know Lynn and a host of others in organizations are really trying to start having that conversation, and it's one that we need to be more present in. So Bennett, any final words before we shift over to our next speaker?
No, I'm sorry about the noise. I'm in the shop. I got called in today because I'm helping out with the roads for these buses for lithium mining stuff that's going on out here. Where it looks like there's a protest itinerary, and they just called us at the last minute to help them fix the roads.
Bennett, thank you for your commitment to even joining us amongst that. So we know that you're pulled in many directions. Thank you very, very much. We are going to welcome onto the screen Georgie. Let's see if I can pin Greg.